stretch. I've been working at it for a long time, and I've learned a few things along the way, but it's very clear to me that there's much more to learn. And I thought today that I would share a little bit of some of the learnings from the last couple of years as Earthlink has been acquiring other companies and going through what is really a complete business transformation. So I thought it might be helpful to give you a little bit of a background on Earthlink. I'm going to give you about a 10-year overview because I've actually been there 10 years. Never thought I would be there 10 years when I joined. We've been through so much change in that amount of time that it's been like working for at least 4 companies during that. And I'm gonna divide it up probably a little bit unfairly into 3 specific phases. When I first came into the company, our whole business was we were a consumer ISP, an internet service provider. We survived .com. We were a profitable company. It was all about growth and growth in our profitability. Now, as time went on, of course, the telecom started to bundle the same services, and the cable companies got in the game, and we were not a facilities-based provider, so we didn't own all that infrastructure. And it's harder and harder to compete, so we tried some other things, actually. We spent a lot of money launching other growth initiatives that didn't work. And by the time we got to about 2007, we realized we need to pull back to the core business, get out of these so-called growth initiatives that are not growing, and take care of the customers we have, generate as much cash as possible, and decide what the future is for the company. And maybe the future is just a return of capital. And finally, at the end of 2010, we started acquiring other assets to help transform from a consumer-based business into a business services focus, from an internet service provider to a provider of network and data and voice services and increasingly IT services for small and medium businesses. And so since that time, we've been going through the process of really trying to integrate 9 companies around a common mission, a common vision, a common culture to drive what is actually a new strategy for all of us. So it's not just M&A, this is truly a business transformation story. So we take culture very seriously, and we decided after we made the major acquisitions that we should do a baseline Dennison assessment. And I'm giving you a couple of my subgroup results here from that baseline. Actually, these 2 locations represent 2 different legacy companies that are now being brought together. They're not the total scores for those legacy companies, but those 2 locations are similar in terms of size, the number of people. They're similar in terms of the functions that they carry out there, so the levels of people are very similar. And, you know, right off the bat, we saw when we got these scores, of course, the leaders of location A, you know, kind of puffed up their chests and felt pretty good about how they looked in these results. And they really did have a track record for execution. They were very good at setting clear direction, executing on a change. They had a lot of long-tenured employees that, frankly, went to school together. They go to church together. The kids now go to school together. You know, close-knit community. And they're very proud to say that they run a very tight ship. All right? A little different from location B. This location was exhausted. So these are both sort of CLECs. They're telecom, competitive local exchange carrier companies. And there's a massive amount of consolidation in that industry, and these people were tired, dizzy from how much change they've gone through, a lot of chaos and a lot of confusion about what they need to be doing as a business, and as a result, really had lost trust in leadership. Now, even though with acquisitions, leadership changed, they lost trust in the concept of leadership, that you could have strong leadership. They were absolutely exhausted, and they were angry, and they were vocal about it. So it was interesting too. We do a lot of work with town hall sessions and debriefing sessions when we bring the results back, so you can imagine which session was easier than the other one when we got in front of the folks and started talking. And actually, I'd like to ask you, think for a moment if you were a leader coming into this business and you're going to run one of these groups and you need to deliver business results and failure is not an option. Which one would you want to lead? Before you press, the buzzer and say this is my final answer, don't get all excited about super high scores on the surface and don't be devastated by what I've now learned is called the donut of doom, because there can be so much more behind this story. Group A has a very command and control style of leadership. They follow direction and they don't typically ask why. It's very rule-oriented. On the other hand, location B was so humbled by the struggles that they've been through. They were absolutely tired, but they were desperate to do something different, and they wanted to wrap their heads around a new way of working. So they were excited to embrace where we were headed. So the question becomes very, very much, do we have the right kind of culture for where we're going? Not necessarily where those initial scores are. And that's especially true in the case of business transformation, when you're rewriting the rules of what your business is about. We've always had a great culture, and we take culture very seriously, and we think we have to be intentional about culture. And by the way, we even lost a 10-year beloved CEO at 49 years of age to cancer 6 weeks after he was diagnosed in the middle of all this, and brought in a new CEO. And throughout this process, we had to think about what are the cultural tenets that are absolutely critical that they stay in place, and which ones need to change as our strategy evolves. One that has absolutely always been there for Earthlink is transparent communication. Open, honest, the truth to our employees, to our customers, to our investment community. So even during those shrinking years, very frank conversations with employees about, not everybody's job will be needed in the long run as we keep moving forward down this path. That is a key tenet of our culture that has never changed. It's been very important, even across the change in CEOs. An example of an area of our culture that needed to change was sort of the attitudes of our people. People joined Earthlink in the beginning because we could build cool new stuff, right? We did cool technology at the beginning of people getting on the internet, and even surviving, the .com bust. We were still innovating cool products that people wanted to get involved with, but by the time we got to that sort of retrieve and optimize cache phase, we absolutely needed good business people. People that created stuff that was going to deliver a return, not just cool new stuff. And that was a very intentional change we had to go through. And now increasingly we're moving towards this developing people who can really create smart solutions for our business customers. Still using that IP talent that we've had all along, but now with a new application. So that final learning is really to go beyond those surface scores and understand where your levers are for change when you need to realign your culture to a new strategic direction in your business. So overall, I've had to sort of warn people with time not to get too caught up in those initial scores. We have to look at them more deeply, and we have to be very intentional and honest about what we need in our organization to drive success.